This is Jo here from Now Leasing in Darwin. I'm here to give you a bit of a roundup for June 2021. We are in the middle of lockdown at the moment, so our market is in a little bit of chaos with all of that. But in saying that, we've seen some really good figures so far for June. Relets are up about 30% in rent rates, lease renewals sitting at about the 15%. Stock in our market is still very, very tight. We are waiting to see what the lockdown has issues with that so far, but I think overall we should just keep plodding along on much like we have for the last couple of months with high demand and increased rents. Over to Ash in New South Wales.
Hi there, Ashley Merlot from the Property Collab. I am also coming to you from lockdown this morning on the Northern Beaches in Sydney. We've been here before, so I feel like a bit of a veteran in this space now, but at the moment across the Northern Beaches and Lower North Shore, we're currently seeing our vacancy rates. For the Northern Beaches, we're sitting at 1.7%. Lower North Shore, we're sitting just over 3%. So what we're finding is literally within a half an hour span of one another geographically, the vacancy rates can extend quite variably. In Sydney Metro currently, it's currently sitting at 2.9%. So we're finding, if I talk specifically the Northern Beaches presently, our average days on market is anywhere from 3 to 4 days. So we are, although we're in the middle of lockdown, still experiencing quite a high demand. We are doing one-on-one private viewings, obviously for vacant properties only. Whilst properties are currently tenanted, we do have some restrictions with digital inspections only. So I guess the long and the short of it is there's still an incredible demand out there in the marketplace locally. We just have to be somewhat strategic and safe on how we get people through those properties. In terms of our lease renewals, we are finding rental increases across the board for those as well. Again, property specific, and we really are looking at the different micro markets as well. So in all the different spheres in the property management space locally, they are very, very varied. And that's kind of us for New South Wales presently. Over to Kylie in ACT.
Ash. Hi everyone, Kylie Maxwell, currently with White Rhino property in the Queanbeyan region. So our ACT Queanbeyan market is a little bit strange at the moment. ACT, we're finding a lot of our mum and dad investors cashing in on their rental properties. So we've actually lost probably 8% of our investment properties in that market, which then obviously has the flow and effect of pushing out our vacancy rate. So vacancy rates are still sitting around that 0.7%, which is a really tight market. We're also finding a lot of first home buyers missing out on properties to buy. So they are then looking for houses to rent, which means that's a really tight market there as well. Queanbeyan region is a little bit different because our sales prices are a little bit lower in the investment space. So we're actually having investors come into that market and providing some more rental properties there, but we do still have very low vacancy rates. Rent is high at the moment. I think Canberra is actually the highest state Australia-wide for rentals at the moment, which makes that hard as well. As I said, a lot of group housing is happening. A lot of people coming from Sydney metropolitan to regional areas. We are not in lockdown, thank goodness, at the moment, just on mandatory mask wearing. So in that sense, we're lucky. Funny enough, though, our retail space is starting to quieten down. So a lot of the retailers are finding industry is very slow. And of course, we've just gone into school holidays. So that affects our market a little bit as well. But rents increases are still going up, still seeing renewals. But as I said, still seeing, 20 to 30 applicants on a lot of properties, and average days on market is sitting between about 5 to 7. So very strong market here. Over to Melissa. Yes.
Yes. Hi guys, Melissa Hickson from Prime Residential. I am from Victoria. I am one of the only people this time that is not in lockdown. So I'm super excited to that. And look, if you have any, you need any advice, come and see the lockdown queen in Victoria. Alrighty. So we have just come out of lockdown recently, actually. So we actually had a really busy couple of weeks in lockdown. we were still leasing properties through our videos throughout that whole time. So it was really good to see people adapting to the new way of leasing properties. And I'm sure that the rest of Australia will report back to that next month when you guys are in lockdown. So the Melbourne vacancy rate in the inner city is sitting around 8%. So it's still significantly lower than what it was before. But there's still a high amount of properties in that area at the moment. My vacancy rate within the Western Corridor is sitting around 3.2%. So it's pretty consistent. It's been around that figure for the last sort of 6 months or so. And we're finding that a lot of properties are coming on the books at the moment, and some of them are getting rented fairly quickly. Others are kind of struggling depending on the marketing strategy as well. So within our office, our days on market at the moment is sitting around 10 days. We're leasing our properties fairly quickly within the Western corridor. We're going through a renewal process at the moment. So we've had a lot of people sort of move out of recent in the inner city areas. They're trying to find a cheaper property because obviously the Melbourne inner city market is quite heavily hit. They can potentially get a cheaper property. So I'm finding that those kinds of tenancies are staying, or they're wanting to offer to renew with their owners, or potentially say we want a bit of a cheaper rate if we're happy to stay, and I'm finding some of my owners are happy to negotiate that with their renters in order to keep them in properties. So that's a really good sign. It means that people aren't so easy to sort of move around. Rental increases are happening somewhat, depending on the property and the area. Some rents are going up maybe $5 or $10 a week. Others are staying consistent because the owners don't want a vacant property within Melbourne at the moment. So we're getting lots of numbers to our properties at the moment. So obviously we come out of lockdown, we couldn't do any inspections, and then we went to private inspections, which was groups of 10, and now open for inspections are back. So I'm finding that more people are coming through our homes, which is actually really, really good. And we're probably getting about 6 to 7 groups come through each inspection for the properties that are really priced well and highly competitive in our market. So things are looking up in Melbourne. So I'm happy to report that, and hopefully next time I come to you I will not be down or ever again. We're going over to Tamika in Tassie.
Thanks, Mel. I'm Tamika Smith from Key2 Property in Tassie. I am in the north of the state, and it is all good on the Apple Isle. There is no lockdown, and it's really sort of business as usual for us. Sorry, everyone else in Australia. The rental market here is still fabulous. Rate in the north of the state at about 1%, and in the south of the state about 1.5%. Rents are still about 10% higher than what we were seeing at this time last year, and we're still maintaining those high prices. So that's excellent for our investors. Lease renewals are super strong. Our tenants are staying put. They are not moving, which is fantastic, and our investors are rapt about that. On average, we're seeing about a $20 to $40 a week increase on existing leases, which is great. On the vacant properties, we're seeing around 40 inquiries per vacant property, and brilliant pre-qualified tenants. Most of our tenants are actually coming from interstate. Everyone wants to live on the Apple Isle at the moment, which is good. So inquiry and inspections are really, really strong. And really, that's probably it. There's just a lack of stock for our tenants, the good quality stuff, not your standard run-of-the-mill investment. The tenants that we've got looking at the moment, particularly those from interstate, have got the affordability to pay higher rents and therefore are looking for something a little bit special. So that's the market that we're lacking in Tassie at the moment. So now's a good time to be building your investment portfolio down here. That is it for Tassie. Over to Jason in South Australia.
Thanks, Tamika. Jason Wright, Central Property Management in the northern suburbs of Adelaide, but we go statewide. The vacancy rate in Adelaide has increased a little bit. We're sitting at 1.9 compared to 1.3 last time we spoke about last month. People going through my open homes, as I've said before, we stopped doing open homes pre the very first lockdown and now only do virtual video tour and private appointment. But on average, inquiry is down from 100 per property to about 70 inquiries per property, which is averaging 11 to 15 applications. And then we're taking about 4 or 5 shortlisted people through. Average time on market's still really low at about 4 days. Increasing in rents, we're seeing a minimum increase of $20, and like Tamika, it's 20 to 40 is what they're going up. If they're moving out, we're putting rents up anywhere from 60 to 100, which owners are loving. The thing I'm seeing in the Adelaide market is at the earlier part of this year, I saw a loss in my portfolio because investors were selling because the market was hot, but we're slowly seeing those investors come back into our marketplace, which is really cool. And it's a good time to invest in Adelaide. The only downside is people are missing out. You know, they're going in price guides of 330 to 360 and they're going for 450. Like, there's no control over price of property right now. That's it for Adelaide. I'll hand you over to complete Ashley in Perth.
Hi, so I'm Ashley Goodchild for the Perth area. So we had last year at the same time 4,171 properties available in the Perth market, and we currently have 2,000, and we are currently in lockdown in Perth. So we have got the next 4 days of permanent lockdown, which does restrict all our viewings. We are finding rent renewals are still happening very easily, with rent increases around the $20 per week mark. Properties are taking around 4 days to lease. And we are finding that it's just a real supply and demand issue. So basically what's happening is we've got very, very low stock. So some suburbs only have 8 properties available for tenants to choose from. So those properties tend to be about 10 k's out of the CBD, and those properties are still achieving 20 to 30 people through the first home open, but the quality of tenants is still really bad. So we've got maybe of 30 people that look through a property, only 30% would be of a decent application to process. So that's a bit of a struggle at the moment. We're finding that the properties closer to the CBD are leasing out nice and quickly, and that's purely just because of a stock level. I am finding that still very huge is our Sydney and Eastern State investors buying in Perth, and they're buying out of the Perth area. But the properties that are being bought close to the city are actually properties that owners have bought for an investment to demolish and to one-day live in. So the quality of the new rentals coming on the market is not fabulous. So it's just very, very interesting to see that closer to the city, the quality of properties is a bit more average than the quality sort of outside. So I'm not worried about the lockdown. I think it's only temporary for us, and I don't think it's going to be a massive change in our market, but we'll see what happens with it. I think if anything, it'll probably just create a bit more of a demand and a rush for people to either buy or rent. So I think that we still will see a very consistent rental market like we've seen. I feel like every month I just repeat myself with the same thing, but I think give it sort of 6 months, and with more investors buying, more stock available, and that should stabilise the rents. So that is for the Perth market for June.